I will there be light. So this one, while it seems very obvious on the surface, is actually somewhat kind of tricky, and it's actually tackling a little bit of more in-depth subject than you might actually recognize. So yes, I will there be light. You're going for the light. You want understanding, you want experience, and you want to see the illuminated reality. And that's kind of what it's actually about. There's that little line about don't let the ego's ideas, paraphrasing, about this is heaven, something. But in the sense of recognizing that, yes, even as people take A Course in Miracles and other spiritual practices, and even the Bible saying heaven is here, heaven is now, and that is literally from A Course in Miracles in the Manual for Teachers, but the sense of what that means is not about this. Like if you're seeing bodies and physical reality, you can't say heaven is this. This is not heaven. So it's actually what is, say, the world that opens up to you in the illuminated, transparent reality. And I have to really emphasize illuminated and transparent reality. So that is referring to this same somewhat construct, but it is the spiritual universe version of what you see here. So it gets a little tricky because what you are saying is I will there be light is not in reference to darkness. Even though it's suggesting that you don't want darkness, it's more about the fact that you don't know yourself. And that's what it's referring to the darkness as. But the light that it's willing, that you are willing and bringing into motion, is actually to see the illuminated or lit up world, the world of light. So the universe in which, the spiritual universe of light. So it's pretty fascinating as you see it starting to come into fruition and really grasping what this is about. A lot of people just recognize that, one lesson in, say, the earlier parts, I believe it was 7 or 11 or something, about the light. There's a white light that you see around objects, and people just obsess about that a lot, but then it never talks about it ever again. And yet it's just simply not directly talking about it. It is talking about it using this Christian terminology and this offset kind of branding about what it is referring to. Like this is trying to, and knows how to, get through and past your little ego. So that's one huge reason why it's using Christian terminology and masculine pronouns, is because you have to already be willing for this light in a way in which you can approach this practice and get through those already difficulties right on the surface. If you have this aversion to knowing God, it's more so like you have this aversion to what, say, your religious practice that you were raised in, and what they were talking about God in, your punishment, and that you're going to hell and all that stuff, and you're projecting it onto this for that example. So we actually are coming into the recognition that your will and your God's will is all the same will that literally generates realities, that generates this whole experience. So while you're coming into, say, a spiritual practice, you're really training your mind to use the same will that you were going into crazy worlds and lost, darkness, misunderstanding, forgetting yourself, being miserable. You're willing all of that. Now, it doesn't say God wouldn't will that. It says, would God will for this stupid stuff? It doesn't say that. For some reason, words can't seem to, they are eluding me about the lesson. It's kind of funny. But in a sense, it's a question. And it's more so about what you are. And it would rather that you ask that question to yourself than assume the answer. And it's likely that you already have assumed the answer, and think of it in a fashion, oh, well, no, of course not. God wouldn't will disaster, just like God did not create this meaningless world and all of that, misunderstanding it usually when they're interpreting the lessons. It's pretty interesting as we see it in this fashion, because it's more so, it's like, yes, you are an experience, and you are going through this, what you call an experience around you. But this is all what you are as the experience. So you're one option of trillions upon infinite trillions. Okay? And God is experiencing you. So what that is actually what God is yes, it's developed literally every single experience. Every possible option of experience, every variation of those options of experiences, and every dimension and density and a variation of all experiences possible. And you're one of them. You're going through, and you pick through into different dimensions and variations of all of them. You're experiencing all the possible variations. So a lot of people get confused by this and get mixed up. And as you're reading this, a lot of guilt is projected onto such a lesson like this. That we're like, oh, yeah, I'm doing something bad. I'm doing something wrong. I'm in a world that's meaningless. I'm in a world that's bad. I'm in a world that's negative. And it doesn't say it in that fashion. It doesn't say that it's bad and negative. You do. You're the one projecting onto it, saying that. Meaningless does not mean bad. It doesn't mean good. It's purely meaningless. Hopping back to lesson 1, right? You have to understand here that it is whatever you want it to be. It is literally whatever you want it to be. It is literally whatever you want it to be. Now, what do you will it be light? Do you will yourself to know who you are? Do you will yourself happy? What do you will yourself? So, of course, as God, what God is the totality of all knowledge of itself, knowing of all the universe, of all options and variations of that. Okay? So, of course, that can't will for darkness, because that's what you are in the separation experience of it. You have to be separate in order to experience any sort of level of darkness. So God in the totality of that is literally cannot be separate, because even just 99.99% of that is considered a point, what is that, 0.01% of darkness, not knowing. So that that is not God in the totality of what it is, but it is still an aspect of the totality, and you are a variation of some sort of amount of percentage in which your experience is revealing of what the totality of all that it is. It's kind of like a bubble of air. You got a bubble, what's floating around? Ooh, little bubble. Oh, why am I separate from everything? Oh man, this is a scary world. Oh, I just realized I can pop from anything. I gotta stay out of the road. Playing in the road's dangerous. It's dangerous. That's what my son said. It's dangerous to play in the road. and it's scared of death, and it's fear. It's separate from everything. It's separate. And I am all air that exists. You, yes, scared of a lot, because look, you're in a bubble. You're in this perspective of being in a bubble. You're going to try not to pop yourself. Nobody touch me, please. I don't want to pop. And if you talk to me, have a mask on, right? Let's get to know our reality. It is really interesting how you might realize and recognize that I speak about this stuff a lot differently than even what it seems to be saying right off the bat, and what this seems to be interpreted by a lot of teachers, because we don't realize and recognize that if you have any sort of variation of idea that something this book is saying that you did something wrong, or are in a place that is wrong, you're reading it wrong. It's like you can only see wrong by reading it wrong. And it even mentions that. Guess what? It mirrors what is within. Everything is mirroring what is within. It peoples your world. It makes figures that you communicate with that tell you exactly what you want to hear, because it's a reflection of what is going on in here. You see good and bad because you have good and bad ideas. You have good and bad experiences. So you're seeing them out here. You see, oh, there's angels and demons, and you want. It's not about going towards the light. It's about recognizing all is light. We so often get misunderstood, like going towards the light and avoiding darkness. But guess what? It's like when you want to go towards the light, what are you saying about yourself? You're saying you're in darkness. And this is not saying you're in darkness. This is saying you are the presence that can will the light of what understanding is referring to. This is saying you are light. You have to recognize light. It's not saying you are darkness. If you think you have to go towards light, you're saying you're darkness. So you're misunderstanding. You see what I'm saying? You have to actually recognize that you are light. So of course, yes, you can go towards recognition, or you can go away from recognition. And that would be more appropriate in understanding it. But in the sense of where are you going? You're still there. It's the same place. So we understand. I was doing sign language on understanding with my middle finger for some reason.